Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started on our home wiring section. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make an extension cord. Extension cords are used all the time, and a lot of times you're going to have to replace the plug-ins. And that's really the main thing you're going to learn how to do in this, this lab, is really just changing out plug-ins. Now, it's very common for these things to get ripped apart, and people will oftentimes grab them by the cord and they will pull on them, and that will actually rip the wires out of the terminals on some of these plug-ins. So it's really good to know how to wire them back together. We're going to go ahead and we're going to build a short extension cord, probably no more than 2 feet, 3 feet long, and we're going to just do some testing on it, right? We're going to go ahead and we're going to wire in a male end and a female end. So just something to think about. Never put 2 male ends on a extension cord or something like that, or put a female end on a drill press or something like that, because then you can't plug it into the wall. Kind of goes without saying. So we've already kind of gone over what wires will be connected to our plug-in, but I thought we should quickly go over it again. So remember, the one, if you're looking at it straight on, the one on the left here will always be your common, and I'm just going to go, we're going to use red. It will be your white wire when you're doing this. I don't know if you can see my line there, so we'll just put common. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this one on the bottom here is going to be that ground. We're just going to go down. We're going to do ground. All right, and then over here, this one is going to be our hot. So we're just going to come off of this one and go over, and we'll just write hot. All right, so now we kind of know what wires need to go in what areas. Another thing I want to start getting you guys used to is looking at and following directions. So with the plugs that we are going to be using, there will be a direction pamphlet inside of there. If it doesn't have one, I'm going to try to go ahead and attach it in a PDF form. It should be just below this video. And I just want you to look through it and kind of, if you guys have a question, grab those directions first and kind of look into those first. The tools that we're going to need are just going to be a screwdriver. We're going to use a new tool that's actually going to strip the sheath off of our 3-wire, and I'm going to show you this in just a second. And then we're going to need some wire strippers and then just the plug-ins. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Okay, so I've got my 3-wire, and notice that it has this black outer coating to it. This type of 3-wire is going to be different than the type of 3-wire that we're going to use if we're actually putting wires into a house, being that this will actually be a multi-stranded wire inside on each of those. So I don't know if you can kind of look and see, but there's actually 3 different wires in there, and again, they are color-coded just like we would do for 120. So like I said, make it short. Mine's probably going to be a little bit shorter than, say, your guys's will be, just so I can fit it on camera. So first tool that I want to show you guys is this one will be that outer sheath stripping tool. Now, this one's kind of hard to explain when you guys get into the classroom or you guys are actually going to start this. Really take a look at this tool, because up close you can kind of see there's a little bit of a sharp edge in here, and that's going to be used to actually cut that sheathing, while this spring-loaded top here is what's going to hold that wire in place. So like I said, it's kind of hard to show you guys because it's so small. So let me go ahead and we're going to take our sheathing here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut about 15/16 to 1 inch off this. Again, it says this in the directions, so make sure you're looking at your directions, because again, you might be working with a plug that I'm not actually teaching you about. It might be a different type of plug. It might be just a different brand, different model. So make sure you're looking at those directions. So we're going to take our sheathing stripper, let's call it. We're going to put it on there at about that 15/16 range, okay? And all we're going to do is the spring loaded has pressed it into that blade, and we're just going to rotate this around, okay? I do it once or twice, no more than that, and then we're just going to slide it off the end. Now, that sheathing should just kind of peel right off. It's going to have a nice cut edge right here, and it's going to be just ready to go ahead and get onto that plug. Now, there's going to be these little fabric-y strands all throughout this. Go ahead and just cut those off. I just take a pair of side cutters. I didn't name that as a tool we're going to need, but just take a pair of side cutters and cut those off. So I got mine right here, and all I do is I just go around and just get them as close to that sheath as possible, or that outer rubber insulator. I just pull them back, get them all nice. Okay, so at this point you should be working with 3 wires that are all separated. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stripper and I'm going to strip about 5 or 9/16 off of each one of these. Again, all these measurements are going to be in your directions. So I'm going to take my, I believe it's the number 14 for these, and I'm going to do about 9/16. You can measure it out and do them all perfectly if you'd like, but it's totally up to you. And I'm just going to, like I said, go ahead and do all 3 of them at the same time. That way I only have to get my strippers out once. And I just take and I do a little bit of a twist because it's multi-stranded, like I said, and it just keeps the wires together a little better if I twist them. Okay. All right, now one of the cool things is that usually when it's in the strand, it'll actually be put to the correct spacing or placement for that plug. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab my plug and let's take a look at the plug really quickly and then we'll go ahead and get it installed. All right, so I got my, my plug in right here. And this will be probably how it comes out of the box. Be very careful that you do not lose any of these 5 screws because they're needed to actually put this thing back together. The type of style plugs that I like are these clamshell types. And what it is this white piece here is actually movable. Let's see if we can get a slide on the, yeah, there we go. Will actually slide down and it's gonna crush that, that wire so that way it can't get pulled out of this plug. Now you want to be very careful that and make sure that this clamshell is only pressing on the black part of that, that wire or that extension cord. You don't want it to be pushing on any of those individual wires. You want it on the outside, okay? So the first thing I would do is I'm actually going to take a look at here. There's this little white piece, and it might be kind of hard to see on camera, but you can actually pop it out. And it's just made so that if you're using a wire that's maybe a little bit smaller, you can still get that nice crush on it, okay? The next thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna put it off to the side because depending on what type you guys get, mine is big enough that I need to have the whole space. I'm gonna unscrew this front cap here and I'm going to, it only takes like 1 or 2 turns and it actually will come out. Now, this is the actual plug terminal ends, while this is just a cover. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our wire, and if this was a regular extension cord, we would slide this black piece or this cover on. Because we have a small piece for this first side, or because we have a small piece of wire, we can actually maybe even come from the back side and slide it on after. But if you were to do this in a regular work environment, you want to make sure that you put that cover on first, okay? Then we're going to take our actual plug here and we're going to make sure that all of the terminals are all the way backed out. Right now they come and they're all nice and tight. So we're going to go ahead and loosen all those up. And I can just look inside there and make sure that they're all the way extended open, okay? Now you can always tell which one's going to be that ground because it's the green one. And all we're going to need to do is pretty much slide these wires into the appropriate holes and then tighten down the screws and we're done. So the first one I always do is I always try to put in the ground one. And you can do all 3 at the same time. It's probably going to be the easiest to try to get them all in at the same time. It's kind of a little bit tricky. Again, if you need to loosen these up maybe even a little bit more, that's fine. All right, so now that we've got them all put in there and they're all started, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go around and clamp them all down nice and tight. I usually just get them all snugged up, that way it won't fall out. And then I go and make sure that I have nice contact throughout every wire. It's also good to try to make it sure it's in there as straight as possible or centered as possible, okay? So let's go through and we'll just tighten them all up really nice and tight. Again, I try to use the actual Phillips head. Don't get a flat tip for this one. It could easily slip off and you could stab your hand. So make sure that you're using the appropriate tool for each one of these. So now that it's nice and tight, I'm gonna go ahead and take my outer cover here again, and I'm just gonna slide it on from the back side. Again, when you do the second one, this won't be a possibility, but it won't slide off like mine was while I was trying to get it to put on. So again, this will be actually clocked in a specific way, so don't try to force it if it doesn't go on. It actually will have some grooves that it has to line up with. Let's see if I can figure this out. Ah, right there. See how easy that just slid on there? So now, once we get this thing up tight, what I do is I'm going to tighten on my 3 outer or front screws here. Just going to tighten them on. Again, it's only about 1 full turn and they're all the way down. So just make sure that they're nice and tight too. Be careful not to strip these ones out. They're a little bit smaller, so just be careful. And now I'm gonna work on my clam shell here, and you can see that the black insulation is almost right up against this front face, and that's the way we want it. That way when we clamp down, we're clamping onto this black part, okay? So now I'm just gonna take it and get it started. All right, perfect. I'm just gonna go ahead and tighten these up, and I would work them down evenly. If you tighten one all the way up, it will be on there crooked and it won't look right and it won't work right, okay? So just go ahead. Again, make sure you're using that Phillips screwdriver for this one. Now, I want you to also notice that I completely tighten that clamshell all the way down. I don't want it to be above this face. I'd like it to be below that if possible. So now, you're done with one side right now. The other side, when you're doing the female side, should be exactly the same. The actual plug here in the front is the only difference. Again, I'm going to slide that cover on first because there will be no way to get it on after. Might have been smart to not strip the wires before I put the cover on too. Something to think about maybe as you're, kind of planning out your workflow here is to do the correct things in the correct order, right? Okay. And I'm just going to slide it down out of the way. All right. Retwist these guys. Take a look at mine again. This one's a little bit different. You can notice that on the cover it actually has 2 clamshells. There's no difference between this one right here and this one right here. They're just a little bit different design, possibly a different model or maker. So again, I'm going to loosen up all the wires. Mine are now all on the same side. Again, I'm just snugging them all up, and then I'm going to go back through and do my final tight. Just make sure that they're in there good. Again, these things could easily, if somebody yanked on the wire and not on the whole plug itself, it may cause some problems. So make sure they're nice and tight. Another thing I probably didn't point out on the last one is that there's no wires sticking out past the plug. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slide my cover back up. And again, it's going to be clocked specifically for that plug to fit into. If you need to loosen up these, mine's gotten a little bit perfect. Okay, slid it all the way up. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tighten down my front screws again. I'm just going to go ahead, get them started. Nice tight. Now I'm just going to tighten up my clamshell. Again, make sure you do this nice and even, so that way it looks nice. All right, so your completed project should be a little mini extension cord. It should look just like this one, maybe longer. All right, so let's go over how to test this thing to see if it works correctly. All right, so we're gonna need to get our meter out again. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it to ohms, and I'm gonna go to that continuity setting so that it makes a sound every time I touch these wires. Now, I wanna make this very clear. This is not just a troubleshooting technique for this project. It's also a great technique if you ever need to actually test an extension cord. Maybe you think an extension cord has been wired together wrong. This is how you would check it. So what I would do is I would bring both of my plugins close to each other, and all you're gonna do is test one to one, really. So you're gonna put one of your leads into one terminal here. Let's see if it'll stay by itself. If you need to get some help, grab some help. Oh, maybe it'll be better if I just let it sit. Okay, perfect. So now when I go ahead and I touch the opposite lead on the opposite end, it makes noise. So meaning that there's continuity through that, and I make sure that I'm checking the same one on both sides, okay? So, and all you're gonna do is you're just gonna run through each one, plug it in, make sure it's testing correctly. Uh-oh. See if I have, oh, perfect. Make sure that all three are giving you that buzzing sound or that sound, okay? Again, this is a great way to test and make sure that these are wired together correctly. What I'd like you to do to submit for this video is literally just go through that testing process. Maybe have your buddy hold the camera for you. That way you can show this to me, okay? Another thing is, if you guys are having problems getting everything put together, maybe you guys can buddy up and one person could hold one plug-in while the other person puts the wires in, tightens them down, or vice versa, you can help that person out, okay? Again, if you get done early, go ahead and help somebody else get theirs together. Otherwise, you guys are good to go with this lab. Good luck.